Yeah, we're going to be talking all about the bot building workflow. I'm very excited to be here with Sarah, which we can hop into intros now, but very excited to talk about the evolution of the bot building workflow, specifically when it comes to what we're seeing with conversational AI teams today. So awesome. Sarah, if you want to hop to the next one, I'll introduce myself really quickly. I'm Sam Burns. I lead our Breaking Bots workshop series, where we go in and we actually break existing live bots of some of your favorite brands like Nike, Decathlon. We're doing the California DMV next week, going in with conversation designers and developers and saying, hey, what's wrong? What can we break? But then actually going and rebuilding it. And so I'm happy to be a part of this today to think about conversation design principles, breaking bots, and representing the Voiceflow team. Today is going to be a lot about building bots, less breaking. And to help you guys with the Voiceflow side, excited to have Sarah here. Sarah, thank you for joining the session.
Hi, absolutely. I guess I'll just do a quick little intro myself. So I am the content and data management product manager for Voiceflow. Primarily, I manage the NLU management functionality as well as the knowledge base and a whole lot of the AI steps and functionality there. So very excited for this conversation. Seems rather relevant to my purview. So I'm really pumped to hear what you guys have to say, hear your questions, and to build some bots together.
Absolutely. Yeah. To piggyback on that, Sarah is the product expert in this space. So use the chat, use the Q&A, hop on and ask questions in the specific build times. And she'll be able to definitely, I know that knowledge base was a comment in the Q&A a bunch already. So definitely we're excited to chat about that, the blending of NLUs and LLM. So Sarah, thank you for lending your expertise. Peter is not here yet because it's 2 a.m. in Australia where he is, so he's probably sleeping unless his toddler will come up right now. But he will be joining. Sarah will lead the first half of this, and then after the lunch break, Peter, who used to be a conversation designer at Woolies, a large retailer in Australia, is now on the Voiceflow team, helping teams all around the world with their conversation design principles, collaboration, and workflow. So we're very lucky to have him as well. He'll be showing some more advanced designs and applications of what Sarah will be teaching you in the beginning here. But yeah, in terms of the agenda, Sarah, if you want to hop to the next one, we'll take you through what we're going to look at today. So this is right now, 10 a.m. Pacific. We're going to be getting started with Voiceflow. So really, if you're new to it, if you need a refresher, if you've known it, this is a good chance to level set using a template that we'll give everyone in about a couple minutes here. And Sarah's going to take you through step-by-step getting started. Then we'll give everyone here a time to be in their workspace and build their first flow, and ask any questions of Sarah or myself as you get started. After that, we'll hop back into here to talk about NLU, LLMs, and adding AI to the workflow. And then specifically, Sarah's going to have some fun showing you those LLMs and generative AI features on Canvas, which I'm very excited about as well. Then we'll end on a lunch break. Before we hop over to Peter in the second half of today, I'll give that agenda right now on the next slide, Sarah, here, before we hop in.
Having slide transition issues over here.
No, you're totally fine. Pitch will do that to you. And yes, as I mentioned, Peter's going to be really focused on how he uses knowledge-based prompt chaining collaboration to build some pretty cool use cases that he's already built out, to kind of show you what's possible. Then there will be some build time with Peter. Access to Peter is few and far between. So use that access in the chat, in the Q&A, to ask him questions about your specific project. And then you can submit that project, whether you're launching on web chat, SMS, Dialogflow, CX, whatever you choose today. You'll submit that project for review and certification, and we'll give you guys a review this week and give any feedback. So I think that's enough of me. Sarah, do you want to hop over to the next slide and I can give people access while you prep in product, if that works?
Perfect. Absolutely.
While Sarah's jumping over to the product, as mentioned, as part of this workshop, we're giving everyone 30 days of our enterprise workspace. I'm going to drop that invite link in the chat here. It's a long link, so you can't miss it. This will drop you right into Voiceflow. If you have an account already, that's fine. I would encourage you to join this specific workspace. It's built for this workshop. And there already are some templates in here, including ones that Sarah might be using today. So you could follow along. She'll talk you through that. But this workspace will go for 30 days. It's full enterprise access, so you'll have all the AI features, everything you want on that note. And it's a good place to build along with us. Sarah, I think you'd probably agree that building along with you is the best way to learn VoiceFlow today, or
Absolutely.
watching the recording after the fact too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I will turn it over to you then, Sarah, and we will go from there.
Okay, thank you so much, Sam. So maybe maybe I can get a quick pulse check, maybe something in the chat. Is everybody signed in, ready to go? Maybe I'll just get started anyway. So what we are looking at here is the home base of our assistant. So welcome to Voiceflow for those of you guys who are new. We are looking here at one of the domains that I have available. This is my personal playground. In here, I can see all of my different assistants. You can see there's lots of different types of assistants. I'm just going to point out everything that's on this side here before we dive into one of them in particular. Over here, something in particular I want to point out is the settings section, because we're going to be talking today quite a bit about LLMs and AI features. In order to have that toggled, this should be defaulted, but I want to point this out just in case the AI features aren't working for anybody on the call. A double check to make sure to check the settings on this page and make sure that the Voiceflow AI assistance toggle is turned on. This toggle is across all assistants on in your workspace, so you are able to access all of these awesome features. Second, we default to have our new dashboard be in cards, but you can also look at it at Kanban styles. We have a couple of different UX styles to look from. And then you can, of course, delete a workspace, but we don't recommend you do that. Okay, so diving into my assistants, I'm going to create a new assistant here. So my new assistant, let's call it we're going to give it a name. And there's two main types of assistants you can build on Voiceflow. There are the AI assistant types, and those are where you are building from scratch with NLU incorporated. Then there's the second type where you are designing for an NLU platform like Dialogflow. So today, what we're going to be focusing on is building the AI assistant so I can show you that full breadth. You're going to click accept and sign the waiver. And now gets the fun part. So now we get to pick our channel. So I am going to pick a web chat today. And I'm going to specify my language as English. And click OK. Right at this stage, you can already start to add some workspace members because Voiceflow is a collaborative tool. But for today, I'm just going to keep it as myself. Wonderful. So I'm defaulted into a nice little starter template right here. So I'm just going to take a little bit of time and walk through what we see here on our canvas. If there are any questions, like Sam said, please feel free to put them directly into the chat and we will address them as we can. So I'm going to first point out everything that's on the left-hand panel. So right now I am looking at my designer canvas. My canvas, this is where my assistant lives. So it is infinite. I can stretch all around here. Second, I have my knowledge base. We're going to get into some cool use cases. I'll do little demos for you here. The knowledge base is a very intuitive new feature involved with Voiceflow. A couple of things to point out. We do have documentation available right here. So if you want to skip right to the docs for knowledge base, you can access it right here. Add our data source and we can preview the data source. Again, I'm going to go into a specific example here, but just wanted to highlight the main Canvas functionality available in the knowledge base section. We're now going to skip down to the NLU manager. I see we have a hand up.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm Bina's having a little bit of issue accessing the asking the product. So I'll support in the chat if you're having any issues, so Sarah can continue. And then if you have any questions as we go, drop them in the chat and Sarah will answer them after the demo. Or I'll raise my hand if there's something really pressing to jump into, if that works.
Thank you, Sam. Awesome. So we are right now, we are 3 icons down on the left-hand side. We are in our NLU manager. So I'm just going to kind of highlight the key pieces here. In the NLU manager, you have intents, and you have entities, and you have unclassified utterances. Inside of your intents, this is where you can define new intents. You can also import a model of intents directly inside of this view. And I will walk through in detail how we can go about doing that, and we can use AI to generate utterances so we are not writing all of those ourselves. Fourth one down here, we have transcripts. So transcripts are every time that you are communicating through the prototyping tool or the test tool, you are sharing a link to an assistant that you built in Voiceflow with one of your colleagues. You can access everything that they do with your assistant in this transcript section right here. So very helpful. Next, we have analytics. This is a blank assistant, so I don't have any analytics. But if you are sharing, again, the test link, which I will show you how to access, as well as prototyping, or of course, if you are using Voiceflow to host your assistant, you can see some top-level analytics here about interactions, sessions, the top intents being accessed, and recognition rate. So this dashboard is very helpful for high-level direction on how your assistant can be improved in a no-code environment. Second last icon from the left here, we have integrations. This is where we would integrate, because I picked a web chat in this example here, I would integrate directly with web chat. And this is also the perfect opportunity to speak to the 3 different ways that Voiceflow can be used. Voiceflow can be used entirely as a no-code assistant building software. It can also be used as a production house using our dialogue API, so it can actually host your assistant. Or it can be used, you can use the project API. And in that use case, that is where you are using Voiceflow as your content management system, and you are retrieving information and steps and content about your assistant directly through the project API. And in those circumstances, you would not be hosting directly on Voiceflow. You would be using a third party, but you would want to keep all your conversation data in one place. Okay, and then lastly here we have settings. This is project or assistant specific settings. And the main thing I want to point out here is you have some canvas interactions that you can modify right now. But additionally, you have global no match settings. So on the topic of LLMs and AI, this is something else I like to point off right off the bat. Global no match will trigger in your assistant if it does not hit on an intent, and then it does not hit on knowledge base, and it goes to global no match. I'm assuming most of you guys are familiar with the concept. What I want to point out here is Voiceflow has the ability to set either a static or a generative no match. And that is really powerful because it can mean that you can use LLM features very targeted without having randomly generalized answers. If you want to have a specific workflow, and then you don't want it to default to have just general AI query to generate a response, you can lock that down here by selecting, or in this case, it is a default, keeping it at static. So this means, again, you can still access LLM features, but you would do so on the step level, and it would stop your assistant if it can't find anything in your knowledge base or in your intents from querying general questions provided. And this can be very important for enterprise use cases where you want to make sure that your assistant isn't able to answer questions that might be deemed inappropriate or are not proprietary to your domain as your company. So you want to kind of like lock down the content that it can speak to. You want to make sure you keep it on static. Otherwise, in situations like if you want to ask your assistant, why is the sky blue? That's probably not going to be in your intents, and it's probably not going to be in your knowledge base. So if you want your assistant to be able to answer questions like that, that's where you would need to turn on the generative feature. More on that to come.
Hey, Sarah,
Okay.
before you hop into the canvas, we had a few questions about people confused about not seeing the NLU manager on their view. Can you give a quick call out about the different project types just to level set for people today on like what you're showing versus what assistant they might have opened when seeing NLU manager or not?
Yes. Okay. Absolutely. So the NLU manager in particular is a functionality. Let me just go back to the dashboard here. So back when we spoke to building an AI assistant versus designing for an NLU platform, if you chose the second option, you will not default to have the NLU manager available. But if you are going into building an AI assistant, it should be there. Is anybody having issues with that? Hopefully not.
Yeah, if anyone is having issues, you can drop me a DM specifically and we can troubleshoot that on the back end so Sarah can continue. Just wanted to call that out, Sarah, just because there were a few questions about that.
Yeah.
And oh, okay, awesome. I will turn it back over to you then.
Okay. Absolutely. Okay. Let's go into our Fun Assistant Designer. Okay. At this point, I'm going to take a pause, kind of going through the what do we see on the screen? And I'm just going to speak to Voiceflow in general for how to approach it and how to guide you through thinking about learning Voiceflow. When we are here on the Canvas view, this is where you actually build your assistant. The main components of building that assistant are your steps that are all outlined here. And this is an entirely a GUI interface, as well as you have the ability to sort parts of your assistance in things that we call topics. Topics exist purely for the functionality of separating out your assistant into bite-sized chunks of relatability so that it's not it doesn't get a little bit too overwhelming all on your canvas. So if you have the entirety of your company's assistant all on one topic, all in one canvas, it can start to get really, really tiny when you want to zoom out and find everything. So the way that we like to recommend as a best practice is when you are setting up your assistant to use topics to sort through different topics of information. So for example, you might have a help topic and then different types of help troubleshooting or setting up an account. And you would have multiple intents that exist underneath that topic. Again, it's mostly just superficial at the top level to help sort through your various ideas to create a cleaner assistant experience. Components are purely reusable sets of blocks that you save as a component and then can drag in onto your canvas at any time. A very common example of when you would use components would be a handoff to a person or troubleshooting a particular like account system where you wanted to have like an API set up or any particular flow that happens over and over and over again. You would want to save that as a component and then you can copy that onto your canvas at any time. So let's say that at the end of every flow, you want to have a workflow that says, is there anything else I can help you with? And then maybe it's a funny picture or something dynamic. You can make sure to save that as a component, that set of blocks, and you can drag it on at any time. I'm going to go into the steps now. So the way that our block is set up, by the way, if you are coming in and you see that you only have 4, I guess 5 sections set up here, just hover right below underneath the logic and expand. I just know that comes up sometimes where people are like, how do you have extra sections? You have them too. They're just hidden to try and keep the menu as tight as possible. So we're going to start off actually with the talk steps. Okay. We're going to start first with the talk step. So just a bit of a precursor, depending on the assistant type that you chose, we don't have the same exact sets of steps available. So some of this will vary depending on whether you are using a voice assistant, a chat assistant, depending on the channel that is collaborative with. Some things just don't make sense. So that's why these might vary depending on the assistant that you're looking at. So let's just go under the assumption that you are under a web chat. If you are not, I can speak to some of the other steps, but web chat does have most of the steps available. So inside of the talk step, this is where the assistant itself is talking to your user. So obviously we have the text step. Let's just drag this on here. Okay, in the talk step, we would type whatever you are hoping that your assistant is to say, and then we can right away here in this very first step, we can see some of the generative AI features that Voiceflow has to offer. So just as a quick example, I'm not building a flow at this point. I'm just kind of going high level just to demonstrate. So hello, welcome. Let's have you here. Once you put in a first utterance, you can put in a couple utterances if you want to provide more varied training data. But in this case, I just want to have one sentence and I wanted to create variants of that utterance that I am saying to my consumer. So let's just generate 3. Okay, these all look fine. I will accept all of them. Down here, you can set canvas variability as well. You can show a preview or you can show all variants directly on your screen. I'm going to keep it as the default to just show the preview, but you can actually list all the variants if you wish. And you can set that as the default in all of your text steps. Outside of the text step, we have an image card, an image step. Here's where you would upload a specific image, or you can link if you have like a dynamic image generator. A card step, which is very similar, but unlike an image step, a card step is you would have multiple images at once. And then you can write a description underneath. Same with the link generator. Oh, I apologize. Only one image. I was thinking of carousel. And carousel is exactly like a card, except you would have multiple images that would carousel through horizontally. Assuming probably a number of these steps are familiar to everybody here. Listen steps, buttons. A button is a very determinant way of having your user to provide what they want without in fact having to say every time with just free form text. So in this circumstance for the button, maybe button 1 is you're giving your user options. So this is where you would label what the first option is, and then you can attach that to an intent. We have not created any intent so far. Or you can attach it to an action. Actions in Voiceflow are shortcuts to other things. So it's easier sometimes to use actions and cleaner for your canvas than dragging the arrow flow to various parts of your canvas all over the place, especially if you are using topics and nicely sorting all of your different intents together by theme. Sometimes you will have the user's flow jumping from topic to topic and intent to intent. So this is a really nice way to do it directly. You can have this particular button when the user clicks on it in the web chat interface. It can go to a specific other block in your assistant, or it can go to an intent, or it can just end the conversation altogether. You can also obviously do some other components as well. And then lastly, we have a choice step. A choice step is different than a button step, because a button, they are actually interacting with the various intents, but a choice step is slightly different. And I will show you an example of what that looks like. And then we have capture. So all of these listen steps, right, have a default listening. The capture automatically defaults to capture the entire user's reply and save as less utterance. This is the default every time. You can absolutely save it to be something very specific, a specific entity that you've defined that you want it to capture. So let's say you are asking the user to tell you the size, but you didn't give a drop-down list of buttons. In this case, you like, please tell me what size you want. And then you could use the capture to actually pull out the size. And then it would use the NLU model to grab that entity to label the correct size. Wonderful. Next, we have logic conditions. So these are incredibly helpful when you want to create branch paths in your assistant. We have the condition step, which is a bunch of if statements. This is really, really helpful in cases where, depending on, for example, if it's a new user, so the session ID, or it's a repeat user, you can create different conditions, different types of greetings, and different whole flows altogether. We also have the set step, and this is where you are defining variables. So here you can use the expression to define how the variable is set. You say what variable you want to be applied, and you can enter the label. You have random logic. And this is where you are defining the various different paths that you want to have curated. Now we're getting quite detailed into the different types of flow, so I'm probably going to stop bringing the specific steps onto the canvas because it's getting a little bit too in the weeds. But this is just to specialize so that you can get very specific listening functionality depending on your particular use case. You, of course, can also like drag in a component here, and you can just end altogether. It's just another way to drag to end a part of a conversation. We then have developer steps as well. So this is where you can actually define your post or your get API calls. You can put in direct JavaScript, or you can create custom steps altogether if you are code inclined and want to define those steps right off the bat. And lastly, this is the library. The library here, these are little templates. So I don't know if you guys saw what I just did there. A library is like a component. So a library set of blocks is like a component. You can save it the same way. So in this case, in order to have that library API call example defined, it was originally, those steps were defined. Then it was just copied like that, and it was saved as a library component. What this does and why it differs from components in the library is because when you take a particular instance of a library section of blocks and you modify it in that instance, it doesn't change the rest of the instances, versus a component is considered to be universal. So if you modify a component, it will change all of the components. So just a bit of differentiation there between the library and the component section, because we know reusability is really key. So that's the main section here for kind of overview for how to use Voiceflow. I was going to set off to start to create an example flow.
Yeah,
Sam,
I think
does that sound good?
that's a great idea. I was just going to pop on to let everyone know that if they refresh, they should now see the NLU manager on their workspace for both project types. That was just applied now to the workspace, so you all can try that feature alongside and see exactly what Sarah's seeing on the back end. But yeah, absolutely. So this next half hour is blocked to start building your own flow. So I think this is a great chance, Sarah, in the first 10 to 15 to build an example flow on screen, and people can build along with you, and then ask any questions as we give about 20 to 15 to actually go heads down and build their own.
Okay, perfect. So for the example flow that I'm going to build out here, I'm going to take advantage of the NLU manager. So I'm going to define some intents, but I am not going to go out of my way to use the AI steps. And that is because after we give you some time to build out some of the flows yourself, so after I take a break from talking, you guys go build out a flow yourselves. I will be showing 2 very detailed examples using prompt chaining and the AI steps for how that can come to life. So for right now, I'm going to do a more basic workflow just to get you guys started. Okay, so we're going to start off first. I'm going to make an example flow that ironically is going to teach somebody how to use my software, which is Voiceflow. So in this example, I'm going to find my start, And I'm not going to use the template that comes in here. So I'm just going to drag my start all the way down, and I'm going to delete that arrow. So I just clicked it and I clicked the delete button. So I'm starting with essentially a brand new flow. Okay, so what we're going to do first here, everyone can follow along, is I'm going to set a very basic persona. So, because I want to have a custom greeting, we are going to go to the set step. So I'm just going to slow down a little bit here. We're going to go to the logic section on the steps menu, and I'm going to drag over a set step. Wonderful. Inside of my set step, I'm going to call this set persona. I'm going to apply it to, and what this is asking for here is a variable. So I'm going to apply it to a persona. Let's call it in this case, happy persona. And I'm going to click the plus because this is a new variable. Wonderful. And now I'm going to put details about my persona. So you are a happy chatbot that has been doing their job a long time. You make a lot of jokes and are very patient. Okay, it is critical here that this is defined as a string. So I didn't do that on purpose so you could see what happens. If I move out of here, it is telling me that it is expecting to define this as an insert. So you do actually need to put quotation marks around it. I encourage you all to define your own personas and not to define it the way that I did. So put whatever persona you wish. Okay. Now I want to have a quick divergent path to show different types of welcome greetings depending on whether it is a new user or return user. So the way I'm going to do that here is my logic if step. And you'll notice here for Canvas, again, consolidation and a really clean canvas, you can combine a lot of the steps together. And it's personal preference when you do this. It doesn't change anything about how the actual assistant functions. Okay, so in this case, my first condition is going to be new user. And my condition is going to be if my sessions is equal to 1. Wait, is. No. Perfect. Sessions is 1. So that's my first defining that I'm going to do there. And then I'm going to add a second condition. I'm going to call this one returning user. Is greater than 1. Okay, so I'm just going to keep it here for a moment so you can see I have 2 conditions defined. If my session is 1 or my sessions is greater than 1. Okay, at that point, I am going to exit out of my condition step. I don't need any more conditions. Okay. Okay, here, I'm going to use my talk step. Oh, apologize. There we go. I'm going to use a response AI step, and we are going to leverage our persona. In the response AI step, I will go through this in detail when I do the more detailed example, but for this use case, I just want to demonstrate where you would put in the details about the persona. So I have happy persona, and then I'm going to say, generate a unique and fun coffee orient. Oh, no. I haven't defined it for a coffee shop yet, but to a brand new customer and ask how you feel. Okay. And then in my prompt section, I also am going to put happy persona. I'm going to go through the details of how to use this for now. Just leave this the way that it is. I'm going to go through details of how to adjust the prompt settings later. So for now, just leave the defaults. Okay, perfect. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually copy and paste that block. But now I need to define it for a return user. I'm going to define here, I don't want it to use their name because you are using generative AI, so sometimes it will make stuff up. Again, I'm just going to leave the prompt settings as they were. Okay, wonderful. If you are following so far, at this point, I now want them to openly ask for information. So in this use case, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to, are you guys looking at, did it switch over to, can you see my Wikipedia article?
Yeah, jump to water skiing here.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to grab a random article from the internet. So in this case, I grabbed a Wikipedia article on water skiing. So just in my quick example here, my assistant is going to help the user with water skiing questions, and you're going to see how in a moment. I'm going to go back to my fun assistant. Perfect. Okay. I'm going to now go into my knowledge base. I'm going to go up here to add data source. I'm going to paste my water skiing URL. And just because when you're playing and adding data to assistants, it's always nice to do a pressure test on the data source before you go too far. So what I would encourage you then to do with whatever data source you select is to use our AI preview button. So let's ask the assistant a question. Let's say, what are the basics of water skiing? Wonderful. So I can see came up with a perfectly good response to that question from my knowledge base source. And I can see I have my sources listed below. I can even see the chunks that were pulled to synthesize that response. Up here in the settings, you will notice that there is an existing system prompt for knowledge base and that the defaults here are quite different. I will go into the details again when we go through some of the more robust AI examples. I just wanted to make sure that this preliminary example was a little bit of an intro to some of the AI features, since I'm sure you guys are very eager to jump right into those. Okay, so we've set a persona. We're going to give a dynamic greeting depending on whether it's a new user or an existing user. But now, let's say in my use case here, I'm sorry.
The lines are being finicky.
Yes, they are. Okay, I'm just going to reload.
And while you troubleshoot that really quickly, Sarah, there were a lot of comments about like componentization and the library. I think from what we see teams use, like people would maybe reuse this new user, returning user component, for example, save it to their library, and then their team can go and repurpose it, right? Or you have one sprint at the beginning where devs, PMs, and design all agree on what the new user flow looks like. It's decided once, and then it's repurposed across every assistant. Would that be accurate to what you're seeing today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
That's perfect.
That's a great example. I think I forget who had the question, but just Andrew. Yeah, Andrew had the good question. Cool. Back to you, Sarah. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Also on those collaborative features, right? So if components are being defined and you have your team members coming in, we do have comment features that are available. So you can add comments directly. They can be resolved all in features. So this is some of the collaborative functionality. I know today we're not collaborating a whole lot with the assistants being built in this workshop. But if you were, I know the comments features get used quite a lot. And so in the case where you were defining perhaps a new component that would be very reusable, I'm sure there would be some comments as that is being further defined. Okay. All right, so we've had a greeting, and I'm just going to make a really simple flow in this use case. So then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just have a listen for all intents. So what that's going to allow me to do is I'm going to make one intent, and then I'm going to access my knowledge base as well. So I'm going to leave it nice and open-ended. And in order to create an open-ended, what I mean is you want it to be able to listen for anything, but you're not trying to define it too far, right? You just want to welcome and have an open-ended assistant. What I recommend doing is just dragging over a choice step as is, and then not modifying anything. So you'll see here the default is listen for an intent. So it's just listening. Perfect. Okay, so all we have done at this point is define a persona, and we have welcomed dynamically. So now what we're going to do is we're going to define an intent. So what I'm going to do, there's a couple of ways to do this in Voiceflow, but for speed, I'm going to go directly into my NLU manager. I'm now going to add a new intent. I'm going to call this intent sign up for an account. Probably just sign up, actually. And then I'm going to use the generative features to quickly create this intent. So I'll put in a couple examples for the generative AI to go off of. I want to sign up. Register. Oh, we didn't need to put that many in. And then I'm going to use the generative function. I'm going to generate some more utterances. Those are all perfectly fine. I will accept all of them. What you can also do here, this doesn't apply in my use case, so I'm just coming up with a quick example, but you can come up with intents that have obviously entities incorporated inside of the utterances. So as you do so, for example, just to demonstrate, I have an account. I'm just making that up as a new entity. You see how it then shot me over to create that entity. Let's say it's a number. So now that I have that as an utterance, it is now labeled as a required entity. This is very useful for setting up accounts and a lot of different workflows where you need to have a certain amount of information captured from the user before you can go on to the next step. And then you can have reprompting and a bunch of other dynamic workflows. So just wanted to point that out, that you can do that all very easily right here. But this doesn't make sense in my use case, so I will take that out. Okay, I now have a new intent, sign up. But I have that nowhere in my assistant. So I'm going to create a new topic. I'm going to call it sign up. And it already comes with vaulted select intent. I'm going to select my only intent that I've defined, sign up. And in this case, I'm going to just do a really quick little workflow It's just going to say, great, let's get started. And then it will continue with a bunch of different flows from there. I just needed to trigger so that you guys could see that. And then I'm going to leave an open capture step so it can go on to the knowledge base, which again, only has a water skiing example. Okay. So to recap, before we do our prototyping and testing, all the assistant does right now is it sets a persona. It then welcomes the user dynamically, and it listens for an intent. So what I'm going to test for is I'm going to show you how I can ask a bunch of water skiing questions, and it will really dynamically respond to those questions. And then I'll also show you how I can ask the question related to the intent that I defined, and it will go down that workflow. Great. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways that you can test your assistant. Voiceflow makes it incredibly easy to test dynamically in the tool. The really quick way, actually, I'll just show you organically, is if we were to go run. There we go. You will notice that your assistant will ask you to do training. So let's train our assistants together because otherwise the NLU has not been trained and it will not find my intent.
This is where we need to fire, training music or something. It needs to be built into the product so we can have a little bit of some Jeopardy music or something, right?
A little Jeopardy soundtrack,
exactly.
Did
you name your water ski store in the Fun Assistant? I feel like we have to come up with a water skiing business name of some sort. Sarah?
Sure, or like don't tell mom because water skiing is incredibly dangerous.
It's black market water skiing. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you'll notice here when I'm testing my assistant, I'm going to want to define some variables. So, okay, let me just walk through in detail how to do that as I am testing. Okay. Right at start. And I'm going to define it according to sessions as a 1. Okay, so what I'm doing right now, got a little caught up in the excitement of the build there. What I am doing is because I am prototyping with myself, I have to tell the assistant what persona I am coming in with. So in this case, I'm defining the 2 personas, right, that my assistant is expecting to have. It's expecting to already see a new user or an existing user. So all I'm doing is just reclassifying those by the same things, which means I need to have a new user. I want it to start right at my start block. I want it to be defined by the variable sessions, right? Because that's how I defined it before, if it was equal to 1 or greater than 1. And then I'm defining what that means. So a new user, the sessions is equal to 1. And that's because that's the way I defined it before. Create my persona. Reset test. I'm also going to make a second persona. Let's say 5. Okay. All right, in this use case, let's actually pick that I am an existing user. When you are running your assistant, you'll notice that I have a bunch of stuff up here, and it's because I like to run all of my tests with up here in the settings besides share prototype. I like to run it in debug mode with intent confidence score defined. That helps me really clearly. I get a bunch of different stuff defined in there, and then I can really clearly see whether or not it's hit a no match intent, whether or not it's gone to my knowledge base. So I really encourage you turn these on. Okay, so let's see what happened here. Hello there, new friend. Welcome to my little corner of the internet. I'm excited to chat with you today. How can I assist you? Wait a minute, hold on. I want to restart my assistant because I did not put that in properly. Do existing user, there we go. No, it keeps defaulting to 5. Okay, Either way, you have my happy assistant here. Hello there, sunshine. Welcome to our chat service. I'm happy to be your personal assistant. What can I do to make your day brighter? Okay, so he is very, very happy. The persona is established. I feel the love. Okay, I want to find out some stuff about water skiing. Can you tell me if water skiing is dangerous? Okay. Yes, water skiing is potentially dangerous and safety measures are important. You will notice I did not define any intent, and this was not searched for just globally using just GPT or an LLM model. This actually came directly from my knowledge base. And you can see here, because I have a little brain icon, as opposed to previously when I had the response AI step, I have the AI icon. So I can clearly see here this response is coming from my knowledge base. Let's ask another question. Same question we asked the knowledge base preview of water skiing. The basics of water skiing include a deep water start. You get the idea. What I want to point out here is the none intent match. That's really critical here. Remember, I mentioned previously that the way that Voiceflow works today is that it will first, when your user asks a question, it will look in the NLU or wherever it is in the state dialog. If it doesn't find a match to an existing intent, it will then search all of your knowledge base content. So all the sources that you have, I have one source, but you could have 50 sources. It will search all of that. If it doesn't find a related match, it will then go to the global no match. So I can see in this case, my no match was high enough in both cases that it was like, we have no existing NLU that matches. I went to my knowledge base. Okay, let's see if we can hit the intent that we defined. I want to sign up. Perfect. So it went to in this case, I'm not sure what I'm signing up for, but I'm signing up. In this case, it went directly to my intent, and you can see really nicely that it guided me towards that topic on my Voiceflow canvas. So I think I went a little bit over time, but hopefully this was helpful. Sam, that's it for my demo for right now. So I think we'll pass it over, and then I'll share my screen again later, and we'll go through some really detailed and pretty neat AI LM examples.
Yeah, absolutely. That was fantastic, Sarah. Thank you for distilling it so well. If you want to jump back to the canvas, just for people to kind of use that as a level set area, I'll say this right now. We'll spend about 15-20 minutes or so on like heads down working sessions, and also kind of open Q&A. So if you have Q&A questions right now, we'll just kind of be jamming here. You guys can, if you need to do a breakout room, we can do that. I think ideally, if you guys would want to take what Sarah built here and build it for yourself, or maybe you built it already while you watched, it's a good chance to ask some good specific questions now, or use this time to get a water, or even do some more design. That said, Sarah, there are a few questions, if I can kind of rapid fire you right now from the chat.
Yeah, let's do it.
So Patricia was asking, will customers see the brain/AI logos in the sources, or in kind of talking about the prototyping versus the live experience, if you can talk more towards that?
They will not be seeing the AI and the knowledge base. It will be symbiotic for them. This is for the creator experience.
Yep, absolutely. And then Samar asked, since we are powering bots with LLMs now, does that mean combo designers are no longer need extensive spreadsheets with sample utterances classified into intents, or do we need just less sample utterances for each intent now? That's a great question, Samar.
Oh, that's a good question. And I feel you get a lot of different opinions. In my personal opinion, I think you're right on that just having less examples as opposed to just a one example. If you have, I think we've all been through this, right, with the generative, or if you play with GPT at all, if you just provide one example, the generative or variants that are produced can be kind of one-noted or very flat. They'll really kind of stick to the constructs of what you defined, versus if you provide a couple of different varied examples, I found really great generative variants are created after that. So I would say maybe less examples.
Yeah. And I think across the board, we're seeing data scientists, devs, designers, they're not using spreadsheets anymore, and instead they're using the NLU manager. They're doing all of that work in-house inside the tool versus starting on like a static Excel or a Sheets or a Miro, for example, and just starting here, collaborating inside, optimizing from what the customer's saying, what transcripts are showing, and adding that into the NLU model. Not to mention any sort of LLM type of classification, which Sarah will tease and Peter will show a little bit later in terms of using LLMs to classify intent. That's a whole nother piece to uncover. But great question, Samar. Stefan mentioned and asked during the sign up, what happens? Asking the user a few questions. What happens if they ask a question instead? How do slots get filled? So maybe Stefan, if you could ask him, if you could follow up, are you asking about like specifically the sign up intent and flow that Sarah built here? I don't think you're talking about the Voiceflow sign up, but specifically the sign up flow where she said, let's get started. If you can drop a follow-up question in the chat, that would be great, and we can come back. Here's one, Sarah.
I can just ask you to.
Oh yeah, jump in, yeah.
Yeah, so imagine that you're about to pull a certain information from the user. And then you're asking those questions, right? And then you're like putting them in the user mind.
Stefan, your mic is a little bit distant right now. I think I don't know if you got a different source going on. Could you get it?
Yeah, okay. Is that better?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so imagine that in your use case, you need certain information from the user in order to service them. And then instead of giving the information, the user asks a on-topic or off-topic question and diverts the conversation. How does the bot go back and gather that information? I can give you an example. Let's say that you're like in line at a coffee shop and you're ready to order, and then the barista asks you what you like, what kind of coffee you'd like. And you say like a latte, and then she asks you what size it is, but then you ask her a question about the pastries, right? Eventually, the barista is going to come back and ask, finish your order when it comes to, what size coffee you want, what type of milk, and so on. So how does the bot handle situations like that, where the user diverts the conversation, maybe triggers a different intent, or the knowledge base, or none of the above? How does that bring back the conversation to the original, ordering coffee in this example?
Sure. Okay. So in the use case where you want the user to come back and be able to leave, I will address two parts of that. If you are extracting a particular piece of information from the user, like size, for example, you would want that to be saved as a variable, and that it saves for the entirety of the conversation. So it doesn't matter how many detours take place. So that would be something that in the NLU, sorry for anyone who's looking at my screen, I'm going to switch over. In my, this is my little NLU view. This is also valid if you guys want to see NLU there. I just prefer the larger view. Okay, so inside of the NLU, in here, you would define entities, and you would want it to be like size, and then you would say like small, medium, and large, and then you would use the capture set to capture the size. And then if the user made a request that diverged off the path, you do have the ability to do so at certain points, but most defined flows, it will keep reprompting them at a particular point, unless you are continuously defining open intent pathways. So it's not, once a user has defined, has started down a particular flow, it can be difficult to offshoot off of that flow mid-flow, and that's partially by design, so that one check balance is ended before another has begun. So in the use case where they're asking a miscellaneous question, it would hit the no match. It would search your knowledge base. So this is the perfect use case where I'm saying knowledge base is your best friend, because if you're following along the flow and then it asks a question that's totally related, but you don't have anything in your knowledge base, it's going to keep prompting you to resolve the flow. But at the end of every flow, you can have it jump all around and come right back to where you were. But yeah, if you don't, if you're partway through, like if you're partway through the coffee order and they ask another question, right now, it's a little bit tricky to have it leave, go ask a question if it's not in your knowledge base, and then come back exactly to the same point in the flow.
So to summarize, it would be like if you're asking about pastries, it will tell you a little bit about pastries because it's probably in your knowledge base. But if you're asking about pizza, it'll just ask you what size coffee you want.
Oh, okay. So it's not a totally, it's related to their order, right?
Yeah, it could be. It has this potential of being related to the order, right? Because you're asking about pastries, which is related to, like, you go to a coffee shop, you could order coffee, you could order pastries, right? But you can't order pizza.
Yeah, I think Stefan, that what you're hitting on is what I think Sarah's going to cover in the next half hour or so is actually pretty helpful to this. So it's just understanding the layers of the NLU model, the knowledge base, and then more of like tweaking just generally your LLM model that you have plugged in, because there's kind of, think of it almost like fail safe after fail safe, right? The NLU, to her point, is like once you're down that order path, you're down that order path. Yet if something's not in that order path or an open intent, well, then great, we're going to check the knowledge base. If it's not in the knowledge base, then we're going to have a better, more of that global no match feel, getting people back to the last thing that they were at. So that's kind of, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, that kind of like upside down pyramid, or I guess right side up pyramid, is the way that someone would design from the NLU to the knowledge base to more of the model that they have plugged in with persona attached to each.
Yes. And I mean, if you were asking something, if you had not defined an intent for pizza, there was no API link to a pizza menu or pizza items, and they started asking about pizza, just to be clear, it would identify that this wasn't within its wheelhouse, and it would direct back to the menu items like the bakery and the coffee that it has available. But to the examples I'm going to show in a little bit, the response, like the AI steps, handle this much better.
Okay.
Than the traditional like pathway.
Yeah, far more dynamically, but yeah.
Awesome. One more question here before we go, before we wrap up Q&A, maybe give people a break here for 5 or 10 minutes. The YouTube video came up for the knowledge base, Sarah. I know you're going to touch on that a little bit more. Could you just review maybe the sources for knowledge base today, and if YouTube, I don't believe that's supported as of today from a transcript perspective, but maybe I'm wrong.
Adding YouTube videos to, okay.
Yeah, the question was like the transcript from that YouTube video, which I think is a step.
Yes. So the way that the data sources that are compatible today, long story short, I recommend that you take the transcript from a YouTube video and then save it as either a doc file, a PDF, or a text. Because today, if you just linked to the YouTube link, it won't be able to. However, that is on our roadmap to include the links to any compatible video software that automatically provides a transcript, that you will be able to paste the URL and it will automatically source the transcript as a default. It won't be able to pull the images in the video, but it will actually pull the raw text content from that YouTube file. But today, you will need to save that manually as one of the compatible data formats.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I think that same question goes is, can you just drop a general domain to look at the whole sitemap, or do you have to share each individual URL or upload each individual URL of the web page that you'd like in the knowledge base? That question also dropped. Is there best practice with that today, and then roadmap tease there?
Yes, the roadmap tease is sitemap is coming, but today you do need to paste the individual URLs. As a word of just a heads up, because this does come up a lot, and now we're talking about knowledge base, which is directly in my purview. I do just want to precurse that not all URLs are created equal. I'm sure that's fairly intuitive to everyone here, but I'll just speak to that a little bit. There was a reason why I defaulted to a Wikipedia article. So my general word of the wise or best practice today is to try, when possible, to use URLs that read as close as possible to blogs or are very text heavy, just because the limitations that we have for knowledge base in Voiceflow today is that we are not able to pull out pictures And if you have a lot of websites that people have been trying to load in, they'll take like a random kind of menu page, and it'll have a lot of out of context text all over the place. It's very kind of funky and very modern web page. But in terms of a raw scraping, it's incredibly difficult to actually contextually pull the string together. So it will load in, it will say successful, it will be all fine. But then when you go to test preview questions, you get very weird responses. So that's why I recommend, especially with URLs, when you load in the URL, preview and ask some of the basic questions. And if you're not getting good responses, it's likely as a result of a poorly compatible URL. So we are going to make the URL format a bit more robust. That will be improving over time. So we'll be able to read that better and better. But today, the more complex, scattered, less structured your URL, generally assume the worse the knowledge-based responses are going to be.
Yeah, the knowledge base is only as good as the information, the formatting that you're giving it, right? And obviously that'll continue to get better and more forgiving. But I think what you're describing now, Sarah, like, and we talk about GPT and LLM's impact on conversation design. The conversation designer's role now is the guardrailing and the curation of this content, right? More than creating every linear flow, every single response hard coded. I think what we're seeing here, and hitting on what Stefan mentioned at the beginning, is now a conversation designer can spend less time on iterative tasks like this, the mundane, the 0 to 1s, and more time on like, how do we make this an amazing experience for the end user, which Sarah will continue to show in the second half of this morning slot. With more AI features. But I just wanted to kind of summarize based on the questions we've been getting, and Sarah, everything that you fantastically showed already is like, you can kind of see how the conversation designer and CAI teams roles are evolving. It's not less work, it's actually more work spent on the overall experience and the content that can be shared in the guardrails of the LLMs. And I find that pretty exciting, having been talking about this for 2.5 years and seeing the growth even from last year at this workshop. So a little bit of an anecdote and a summary. But Sarah, anything else before we break for 5-10 minutes to let people get a water or spend some time on their design?
Nope. When we come back, we will be discussing the LLM impact on the conversational journey and how it's going to be impacting your assistant builds. So I will speak to that with some slides, and then I'll go right into some examples that demonstrate prompt chaining, demonstrate sentiment analysis, classification, all that good LLM features, while still working in the traditional NLU workflow. So I'll pull that all together for you with a couple examples.